what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh. Footcandle Films. Film reviews and discussion from two guys who really like movies. This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. Do you enjoy seeing interesting movies that you may not see anywhere else? Taking part in discussions about those films and live in Western North Carolina? Then you need to come be a part of the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, welcome to Footcandle Films. This is our first episode of 2012. I am Alan. With me is Chris. Chris, how are you doing?
Hello.
Hey.
Footcandle Land.
Yes, we are so happy to be with you beginning of 2012 to talk about some films. We're changing the format a little bit going into 2012 here. It's a new year. We're going to try to shake things up a little bit. Before, we were just producing one episode a month, kind of our supersized episode every month.
Sure.
And that's fine. We're still putting out the same amount of content. We're going to break it into two smaller episodes, though, throughout the month. So today's episode, or tonight's episode, whatever time of the day you may be listening to this, we're going to be handling the first part of the show where we're going to be reviewing our Footcandle film of the month. In a couple of weeks, stay tuned because we're going to be putting out a second episode for the month that is going to have some more fun stuff that we'll tell you about here in a little bit. But this being the first episode of the month, we are going to discuss our Footcandle film of the month. We just finished watching the film. It's fresh on our brains. So let's go ahead and talk about The Guard.
Sergeant Gerry Boyle, cop shop.
Or was it a sheep or something? It's a lamb.
I mean, what would his parents think?
I've got some information about that murder last night.
What murder?
How many murders have you had in the last 24 hours?
That's for us to know and you to find out. I wish I brought me handcuffs.
So, The Guard, Chris, I don't have to explain to you what the film's about. Well, you just saw it with me a few minutes ago, but let's explain the short summary to everybody else out there.
Okay.
Brendon Gleeson, who is known, I guess, here in the States, he did have a role in the Harry Potter films.
Correct.
He was also in a film that I know you and I both really enjoyed called In Bruges with Colin Farrell a few years ago. And Brendon Gleeson is the star of The Guard. It is a dark comedy with some crime drama elements thrown in. But it's pretty much his show. He is a guard, a police officer in a little town in Scotland? Ireland. I always get those guys confused. I'm sorry.
Actually, that goes along with the movie really well.
It does, right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's exactly.
It's awesome.
Well, he's a small town cop who gets involved with a much bigger drug deal situation. Drug dealers from England are now moving over, and it's kind of it becomes a little more crime-infested area.
Sure.
And they bring in an FBI, or is it CIA? That's another joke for the film if you see the film. From America, who's played by Don Cheadle, who plays an American agent who's brought in to help assist with the case. And you get a little camaraderie between the two, a little animosity. The two work together to try to help solve this crime and rid their town of these drug dealers. Fair enough description?
Yeah, I think that's spot on.
So let's talk about what we each thought of it. And Chris, I'm just going to toss it over to you to get started. Having seen In Bruges, because there is a lot of similarities. The director of this film, The Guard, is the brother of the director of In Bruges. In the In Bruges, both starred Brendon Gleeson.
Right.
Both were dark comedies with crime and violence and all that thrown in. Very focused on witty dialogue and banter between characters. How did this compare to that film in your mind? And are you anxious to see what the McDonough brothers are going to be either one doing in the future?
Well, how did it compare to In Bruges? That's kind of a hard question because I really, really liked that movie. It was so stylistically, in my mind, different, like cinematography-wise. It was completely different, but it did have a lot of the same kind of bantering dialogue. I would say it's right up there with In Bruges. I will say, however, going into the movie, I was expecting kind of a Irish Lethal Weapon movie. That's what I thought it was going to be. And so I thought it would just I didn't think it would really impress me, but I came away from the movie a lot more impressed than I thought it would be. I liked it a lot more than I expected going in. And I can attribute that probably to the fact that it wasn't just an Irish Lethal Weapon movie.
Well, let's key off of that a little bit, because that's actually a comment I was going to make too, is the film, I can't decide if it's trying intentionally to play against the stereotype, the cliche of the normal buddy cop movie, or if it's embracing the buddy cop movie formula, because it actually has both sides of the coin here. You mentioned the Lethal Weapon comparison. There is some valid comparison there. You have two characters, a lot of animosity between them at first.
Right.
They're from two different cultures, two different worlds, two different viewpoints on how to solve a crime like this. They come together. They do have some bonding moments, just like in a typical buddy cop movie. In the end, they both go in guns a-blazing to try to take the bad guys down.
Sure.
A lot of similarities, but at the same time, I think they are also. I get the impression the filmmaker likes the idea of the buddy cop formula movie.
Oh, yeah.
And wanted to play with that, but he also wanted to throw some things in there to make it a little different. That's the impression I got. Is he wanted to tinker with it, but yet he really honestly loves this formula. He loves this idea of putting these two opposites together, and yet they become friends and work together despite each other.
Yeah, I would say he obviously likes the formula, like you're mentioning, but there were enough twists and turns, which I wouldn't have expected, which I was kind of surprised that it kind of went away from some of the conventional tropes of a buddy cop movie.
Right.
They actually kind of subverted those. But, and that's what kind of impressed me with the movie, the relationship between Brendon Gleeson and his mom.
Oh, yes. He has a mother that's a dying mother.
Yes.
She's kind of in last stages of some illness.
Yep.
And but yet a very, very tight relationship the two have, and you get to learn a little bit more about them as the movie goes along and their relationship and kind of why he is the person he is. It was a nice relationship. I agree. I think it was done really well.
And it was to prove, I think, the side of him, like his humanity, show his softer side, but it wasn't heavy-handed in doing so. And I really appreciate that. And actually, I'm not going to spoil anything, but how that concluded and when it concluded in the film kind of surprised me.
Yeah,
I was
sure.
I was like, oh, and they're okay.
Yep, that was the way it went.
Kind of surprised me, and very atypical, I thought. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was a great film. I actually, in a way, I like it a little bit better than In Bruges,
really?
but for different reasons.
Huh, interesting.
I liked the characters here better, although I like the story better in Bruges.
Okay.
All right. The story was kind of inconsequential to me. I mean, it was it's a crime film. There's some drug dealers who are doing some nasty things and they're trying to get away with it. That's basically the story. In Bruges was a little more of a complex story, a little more twists and turns and some things happening. What I really liked about this film, The Guard, though, is just the characters themselves. I mean, you take Brendon Gleeson's character and he nails it. I mean, it is just a fun character to watch. He's never cartoonish to the extreme. He has the moments where obviously it's silly and he's doing things that are very odd or peculiar or embarrassing, but he never pushes it to that boundary where he becomes a cartoon. He never becomes an exaggeration of that character. He is always within the realm of what you could see somebody doing.
Sure.
And then when he gets serious or actually shows his brighter side, it's never to the point where he becomes this completely redeemable character either.
Right.
He has his flaws, and he has his flaws up until even the last few scenes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's never that he becomes this redeemed character. He's a human being that just is a very eccentric, interesting character that you just really like to learn a little bit more about as the film goes along. I like the fact that almost every scene you were learning a little bit more about his personality.
Right.
You didn't have it all figured out in the first couple scenes. And that I really liked. I liked the characterization of the bad guys. I thought the bad guys were fun in this movie and not cartoonish again.
Right.
You actually hear some of their dialogue when they're sitting around waiting for something to happen or waiting for the next step of their plan to fall into place. The dialogue they have, the thoughts they have, it's all very natural. It's funny. It's just entertaining to listen to and get to know these characters a little bit more. So I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was a really fun film. I think it's great. And I'm definitely sold with both these guys as directors, as brothers. I'm on board for anything else they have to throw at us. Were
you frustrated that Mark Strong wasn't given more to do?
No? I'm a little. Mark Strong played one of the lead bad guys, and I'm a little burnt out on him. He's been in actually a lot of films the last couple of years.
He has.
And he always plays the tough bad guy for the most part.
Stealing stairs.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff.
So I actually was happy. I was afraid he was going to be like the only dominant villain in the film, and I like the fact that there were three, fairly evenly spread time-wise, and all three were very interesting. So no, I was actually okay with his limited screen time. Yeah. Okay. I do have to give props to a couple of the scenes in the film that I just thought really were outstanding. It showed a little bit of a director's flair, a little bit more style than you had to have in a film like this, but it just added a nice extra element to it. There is a scene where we have Brendon Gleeson's guard character having basically a verbal standoff with one of the three drug dealing criminal masterminds. This one being a psychotic or sociopath. That was another joke in the film about trying to decide how to label this individual. But the two of them are basically, sitting down having a conversation where the psychopath is planning on shooting Brendon Gleeson's character by the end of the conversation. And it's just interesting to see how that conversation goes. But the whole conversation was shot where you're looking straight at their faces, just flip-flopping between them.
Right.
Nothing else in the shot except just their tight faces as they're having this dialogue. And it just really worked. I just felt like I was really sitting right in the middle of these guys and just very, very anxious to see where the ping pong match went with the next bit of dialogue. So that was fun.
I agree. I also really liked that scene. I liked the scene where, was his name Liam Cunningham? In the malt shop, there's also a very similar scene where it's kind of a back and forth, not shot the same, but a back and forth scene between Brendon Gleeson and that other bad guy. And I like that as well. That's what kind of got me frustrated, even though I agree Mark Strong has kind of been overdone, but he didn't have kind of a back and forth scene with Brendon Gleeson. The other two did. I don't know if it got cut in the editing room or whatever, but it was like each one of them had their one-on-one time with Brendon Gleeson, and Mark Strong didn't. So I was kind of, and I was expecting it, but then he never got it.
I didn't think about that, but that's a good point.
But yeah, I would say, I guess copycatting or being a copycat is the sincerest form of flattery, copying somebody. And if I had to say a criticism of the film, I would feel like even though it was kind of mocking buddy cop films, and it was throwing barbs at typical Hollywood films and saying things like, "Oh, well, you probably expect this to happen," and they would, talk a lot about it. I felt like the director was kind of copying a lot of Quentin Tarantino's trademarks, not like verbatim per se, but like the font that was used in the credits, the use of music in the film, some of the clever ways they did dialogue and actually, if you think about it, the stage scene. Or the scene between the criminal and Brendon Gleeson where they're having kind of a confrontation in the malt shop was very similar to Pulp Fiction.
Well, it's very similar. I was actually going to ask you about the stylistic choices of the film because I'm with you. If there was one thing I was going to be a little critical of the film for is that it made some stylistic choices that I don't know if they had to be there or not. And I think you summed it up pretty good. I think some of the font and the on the titles and the credit sequences, the music choices, some of the visual elements thrown in there. I wondered at time if they were all necessary or not. I thought the characters and the dialogue were enough to carry this film without having to add some of those more quirky elements just to kind of make it a little more hip, edgy, whatever direction they were going for that. That was a little unnecessary, but not a bother, not something that turned me off to the film, just something I saw as maybe a little aping of Tarantino or other stylistic directors. But Yeah. Otherwise, I personally didn't really have any other issues with the film other than some of the accents were a little hard to follow at times. It would have been nice to have a little more subtitles. But
I got two questions for you. The first one was the boy that is kind of a character that's on a bicycle and appears at random little points throughout the film. What do you attribute to that device, that character? Or do you attribute anything to it? And it was something more than just maybe a little bit of humor? Or
I think that's all it was in my mind. This kid just basically kind of pops out in different places, and he seems to be a very intelligent kid who kind of knows more than what you would expect him to know, and just a lot of quirky things he says and interacts with the different characters in the film. I just saw it as something fun to throw in there. Didn't really have anything more to it, but
I guess I'm on the same page with that, with the exception of the one thing that I kind of took away from it was that towards the end of the film, Brendon Gleeson sees the boy on the side of the road and kind of smiles, and the way he has this look towards him, it's almost like he sees him. I was kind of thinking that he sees himself in that kid. And maybe that's how he got into being the cop that he is because as a kid, maybe he went around and messed around and stuff that he shouldn't have gotten involved with, but then he straightened out, so to speak, and then he became this cop because he references kind of his childhood to his mom, like, oh, I wasn't always such a good kid. She's like, oh, well, whatever, like that.
Right, yeah.
And so, like, because in the film he makes statements to this boy like, oh, you're kind of getting into things you shouldn't really be getting into, but then he obviously has a fondness for the little boy.
Sure.
So, because he mentions that he never has had kids, and he's kind of always wanted kids, but, so I don't know. I thought that was kind of an interesting little thing for the film. Second.
Yes.
The language in the film, not the dialect.
Right.
But specifically the profanity.
Very heavy profanity-laced film.
But let me say this.
Okay.
The only movie I can really think of where profanity was just like so insane, and to me it was like comedic, but it served no purpose and actually stopped being funny, was Harlem Nights, which is a completely different movie.
Oh.
But they swear, like, it's just profanity.
Oh, I remember that.
And it's just like really, really profane.
Yeah, it was bad.
And I didn't think the movie was that good, but it's like they just kept like cussing up a storm. In this movie, they do that, like within the first couple of minutes, there were audience members that were commenting like, wow, they could really lay off the F word.
Yes.
I mean, they was just constantly being used. But I found myself, 30 or 40 minutes into the film, kind of like that just washing over me.
Yes.
And it actually, to me, made the film more realistic because it was like that's how these guys, the criminals were the ones who were really the abusive ones with the F word. But it was like they would use it 3 or 4 times within the same sentence.
Oh, sure.
And it was like, that's just how they were rattling it off, and it seemed more naturalistic for them to be doing that. It seemed like it would have been fake if they would have suddenly just stopped it throughout the film. No, they kept it up for the entire film. There was like profanity, and I thought that was actually effective. And I think I'd have to watch the film again to be completely sure, but there's one time when Brendon Gleeson is with his mom, and they're having a nice conversation. He mentions something, and instead of using the F word, he like comes up with like a polite way of saying it, and then his mom actually kind of laughs, and then she uses the F word, and it's kind of like, no, son, we can be real or whatever. And he laughs, and it's kind of like it's a funny moment that, he was going to clean himself up to talk to his mom, and then she comes right out and says it anyway. So it was little clever things like that, but I actually thought it added some realism to it.
I agree. It did seem to wash over after a while. You don't really pay as much attention to it. I still question, though. I mean, Chris, I don't know anybody, and I don't want to say I've hung out with different walks of life people, but I don't think I've ever met anybody dropping the F-bomb multiple times in a sentence, every single sentence they say. I could be wrong. I thought it was a little overdone, almost to say, you know what, we're going to just push the envelope with this.
See how many we can get away with?
Yeah, in a way. That's the way it seemed to be after a while. But there again, it didn't distract me after a while. It was one of those things that just you got in the habit of hearing, and that's just the way everybody was talking, and that's fine,
Well, and I would say, like, I would kind of agree that maybe it was a little much, but the thing that impressed me was pretty much the only swear word they used was the F word.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty much it.
But it was, to me, that's why it wasn't just, let's see how many can we get away with. It's like it was saying something about the characters that they have a very limited vocabulary, and that's the only word. And instead of actually thinking about what they're saying, they're just throwing that word out repeatedly because that's just what they are.
Could be.
You know?
Yep, I can see that.
If you think about it, they didn't have all these colorful like swears. No, it was just the F word.
Yeah,
over and over again.
Yeah.
So no.
Let me ask you a question too.
Okay.
So on Rotten Tomatoes, which I enjoy visiting the website to see what rating, it takes a composite of all the critics' reviews, what percent of them are positive, which percent are negative.
Right.
This movie got a 95% positive rating, which on Rotten Tomatoes is extremely high. That means basically, 1 out of every, what would that be? 1 out of every 20 critics didn't like it. The other 19 did like it.
Right.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Did I get that right? I don't know if I did the percentage right.
But
you guys write in if I'm wrong.
Almost everybody
on that.
who saw it liked it.
Almost everybody.
Right.
So, but my thinking was, I'm looking at this, and although I liked the film a lot, I thought it was very enjoyable. It's not a film that's going to rack up awards. It's not going to, it's not going to be this critical darling film. It just seems to be an overall agreeable, fun film. Would you agree? I mean, it's not like anything about it is profound. Nothing about it is going to stand the test of time. It's not a film that years from now people are going to be remembering and talking about.
No.
But yet, it's got 95% ratings from critics. I think it's just one of those things where it is a overall generally good, agreeable, fun film that doesn't turn off too many people, that doesn't do too many things wrong, does enough things really, really well to keep people excited and interested in watching it. And overall, it's a successful movie.
And I think it also comes to the people who saw it liked it.
Yeah.
Whereas with other films, so many people, so many more critics see it and are like, oh, I didn't like that. That actually drags the rating down. But in this, you've got such a small window of people who have seen the Guard.
It was a limited release.
Yeah, the people that have seen it are kind of like, oh, yeah, I like it. Whereas if it went out to the general public, a lot more people would be reviewing it, and then it'd probably drag that score down a little bit. I still don't think it would go to it wouldn't go rotten, but it may be lower.
Yeah. Okay. I could see that. That. Well, The Guard, directed by John Michael McDonough and starring Brendon Gleeson and Don Cheadle. We both give it a positive review here. We're saying it's a good film. You ought to check it out. If you can make out some of the thicker accents, you can handle a few F-bombs being thrown at you at rapid fire.
Yes.
And a little on the violent side at times. Not much, not too bad.
It starts off pretty heavy, but tapers off.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Overall, it's just a fun movie to learn these characters and get to know them a little bit better, especially the lead character, and enjoy a little more subversive buddy cop film.
And I'll say that if you are afraid that you've seen the trailer and you've seen what are going to be the funny bits in the movie, don't worry about it. There are plenty more in there. Because a lot of times that is a curse as you see the trailer, like, oh, that looks awesome. And you see it like, yes, and those jokes are the only ones in here, and I saw them.
There were plenty more. So. No, there was definitely a lot of laughter in the film itself. So great. It is available on DVD right now, I believe already. Mm-hmm. And so we definitely encourage you to check it out if you have any interest. And as a sub note on that, if you kind of look at it this way, if you like The Guard, we definitely encourage you to check out In Bruges. If you've seen In Bruges and you enjoyed it, you definitely need to check out The Guard. Exactly. The two are very complementary and very much work the same angle on things, I think, from a style and humor and dark comedy, crime, violence, everything. It's very, very similar in style with one another.
We'll get back to your show in a moment. Just a reminder, you're listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Find out more at themesh.tv and give us feedback on what you like. And now, as promised, back to your show.
And we're back at Footcandle Films. We just finished our main review for the show, the film The Guard. But we also like to spend a little bit of time before we close out the episode talking over some movie news tidbits. Normally in this kind of section, I like to come up with some headlines, some movie-related news, either films that are in production or something interesting happening with a film that we may have some interest in. And I like to surprise Chris with this most of the time and not tell him in advance what we're talking about, because I like for him to respond naturally and see where his head is on these things. So let me go ahead and do it. The first one I know you're probably going to have an opinion on.
Excellent.
Because I believe you're a fan of the original film in this series. Ridley Scott is making a new sci-fi film. It's called Prometheus.
Right.
Coming out this year. And it is a pseudo film tied into the Alien franchise. Now, Ridley Scott, of course, did the first Alien movie.
Correct.
Considered a classic by many, myself included. You, I assume, as well,
yes.
Chris.
Yeah.
Then it went on to being taken over by James Cameron for the second film. David Fincher did the third film, not as good. And then the fourth film, the only thing I remember about the fourth film is that my wife and I saw it on our honeymoon in England.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my memory of it. I could not tell you anything more about the fourth Alien film.
It was directed by the guy who did Micmacs, Jean-Pierre Junot.
Oh, was that him?
It was real bizarre.
Yeah, it was a very odd version of the film. Anyway,
yeah. I still liked it, but kind of weird.
Yeah, it was very strange. Anyway, so Ridley Scott kicked it all off. He started it back in the late 70s. Correct. Supposedly he's revisiting that universe. He is revisiting the Alien story, but he's being very sly about it. He's not calling this a true prequel to Alien. He's not saying it's a direct tie into Alien necessarily, but from what we've seen in the preview so far, the trailer that's come out, the teaser trailer, it is the Alien universe.
Right.
We just don't know if we're actually going to see the aliens in it or not. What do you know about this? Is this something you feel like is a good move? Are you excited about it? Or is it one of those things where we're starting to dilute some of these classic franchises by just adding more to it?
Well, okay. Disclaimer, which I've made before. I am an absolute sucker for science fiction. I have a weakness for it. Especially science fiction that's done by people that I think are capable, Ridley Scott being one of those people. So yeah, I do know about it. I'm excited. I had heard about it and I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. So it's kind of like a prequel to Alien, but it is Ridley Scott doing it, so it's probably going to be okay. I saw the trailer. I can't tell you why I'm excited about it, but I am, because it's like, well, what did you get out of that trailer? Why does it make you excited? I think it's the music, it's the tone of it, and it looks like it's going to be pretty amazing. I think I'm going to like it kind of like I liked Batman Begins. It's like, oh, Christopher Nolan. Yeah, I like the director. He did Memento, but he's just doing a Batman movie. He's rebooting it. Oh gosh, another reboot. But then it's like such a fresh take. It's such a creative Genesis story that you're like, wow, that's awesome. And I think that's kind of how I feel about Prometheus. I want to say that he's doing it because he really thinks it's going to be a good movie. He's not just doing a cash grab. It's not like, didn't Ridley Scott do Hannibal? After he
he did.
Yeah.
He made the sequel to Silence of the Lambs,
and I think that was just a pure money grab. Yeah, so it was like, oh, okay, Silence of the Lambs is popular. I'm going to do Hannibal. I feel like, and I think he's been quoted as something like, I wanted to visit this genre again of science fiction, but I needed the perfect subject material. And when he saw the script, he's like, okay, yes, this is how I'm going to get back into it.
I hope that's the case.
Fassbender,
yes,
has him in it.
It does.
So, and he tends to do good stuff.
We like Michael Fassbender here.
Yes.
I'm excited as well because I do like Ridley Scott as a director, even though recently I've not been as crazy about his recent films.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
But he has made some of my favorite films. Blade Runner, I'm still a huge fan of.
I like Blade Runner.
I thought the original Alien was great.
Gladiator?
Gladiator I really like.
Yeah.
I like Gladiator.
Yeah.
So he's made some really, really excellent films, and he's just a talented filmmaker. I'd like to believe, I hope you're right, that it really is that he said, I don't want to do sci-fi again until I've got just the right story. I hope that's the case. I hope it's not, wow, Robin Hood kind of bombed at the box office and a couple other films I've made in the last few years didn't do too well. So, let's go back to the well where I did make some money.
Sure.
I hope that's not the case. But we'll definitely see. The trailer is very ambitious.
Yeah.
Looks like it could be good. It could be what I kind of wanted out of Avatar, which is to have a true experience with a whole new world and everything.
Wait, you actually wanted a story?
Yeah, see, that's why I was kind of missing out of Avatar.
Right.
Or at least a good story. There was a story, just not a great one.
Not a good one.
I kind of hope it's the same thing that I was hoping to get out of that film, where it truly transforms me into an environment, and just that's what I'm looking for. I hope it's good. I'm really excited about that. All right. So we're talking sci-fi. We're obviously batting in your wheelhouse right now.
Yay.
So let's keep on going with that.
Okay.
One that you probably don't know as much about, and I personally don't, John Carter. John Carter of Mars. Did you read any of those old novels, the old pulp novels at all?
No.
Okay. See, we're both kind of foreign to this concept. John Carter of Mars. Rice Bros, the guy who did Tarzan.
Okay.
I mean, that was some of his old work.
Okay.
And it was a pulp series. It's about a soldier back in the Civil War who somehow gets transported to Mars. As you can tell, I know very little about this. I'm not very well versed in this, but it's been a property that has not been touched in films for a really long time. But it's a very classic property. So Disney is doing John Carter. A little bit of uproar because they dropped the of Mars, because I guess it sounded more hip to say just John Carter. Disney doing it makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
However, Andrew Stanton, who is a Pixar director, he did Finding Nemo. He did a couple of other Pixar films. This is his live action debut. Now, the reason I kind of have a little bit of my hopes up on this, the latest Mission Impossible that just came out.
Ghost Protocol. Right.
Directed by Brad Bird.
Right.
Brad Bird had been an animation director, went live action, was able to successfully transition his style of directing action sequences and energy into live action.
Right.
My hopes are the same things happening here, where this is a guy that just has a great visual style and is able to adapt it to a live action. I got to tell you, though, the trailers have not impressed me that I've seen on this film.
Oh, they already have trailers
yeah.
out.
They got trailers. It's a CGI fest. It's a lot of creatures, a lot of, it looks like the worst parts of the Star Wars prequels.
It's funny, when you were describing it, at first, you was like, okay, there's the Tarzan guys, John Carter, Mars. I'm like, okay, interesting concept. The moment you said Disney, and the moment you threw in it was the animation director, I immediately started thinking of, and I don't think these are Disney properties, but still, I immediately started thinking of the Journey to the Center of the Earth garbage with Brendan Fraser. And then they've made a sequel with The Rock that's coming out that's like, that's what I mean, because it's like a lot of CGI heavy stuff. And it's like, ooh, kids, let's do an adventure. And it's like a very, family friendly, but yet very formulaic and blah movie. And that's what this sounds like it's turning into.
It could be. And the trailers certainly look like it's that way.
It's too bad.
Well, here's what's, I think, just going to be fun to watch in a way is there's a lot of people very passionate about this source material. So kind of like when the whole Watchmen was out a couple years ago, other classic properties that get adapted for films, they're either going to hit it just right, and people are like, wow, that was actually a really good adaptation, and embrace it and enjoy it and becomes a franchise, or they're going to rip it to shreds. So it's going to be kind of fun to see which way they go on this in general.
From the previews, do they show any actors? I was just curious if any actors.
Yeah, the lead actor is oh gosh, you had to ask me that name right now.
I was just curious who was starring in it, because that may give me
He's
hope.
the hunk of the month guy.
Not Ryan Gosling.
No, not Ryan Gosling. He was one of the leads in the Friday Night Lights TV series that I was actually a big fan of.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Taylor, boy, that's not something I know.
But okay.
Anyway,
Friday Night Lights.
I'm sure as soon as we get off the recording, we'll figure it out. But anyway, guy, he's in a couple new movies right now. He's doing a film with Peter Berg called Battleship, which also is a huge CGI, big 3D thing going on.
Based on a board game.
Based on a board game, but this one, they've somehow incorporated aliens back into it now. So, yeah.
Actually, did you know that supposedly at one point, I think Ridley Scott was supposed to do a movie based on Monopoly, which also sounds bizarre.
Yeah. What is it with all the board games becoming?
I mean, you think talk about people
now.
Reaching.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're reaching when they.
I'm waiting for the Jenga movie. There's got to be a Jenga movie where people are like falling by hanging onto these pegs and stuff. Awesome. Anyway, that's two science fiction properties because I knew you're a big fan.
Yep.
And I just wanted to throw it out there. It's a little bit of a, my co-host here getting married this weekend. Congratulations to you on that,
Thank
Chris.
you.
So a little bit of my gift to you is I got to let you talk about sci-fi for the last 10 or 15 minutes. So
Cool.
Good? All right. Great. Well, that wraps up our review show for today. A couple of little housekeeping things. First off, there's a contest going on here at The Mesh. If you don't, visit our website and learn more about it. But for those of you playing along, the code for this show is GUARD 2011. That's the word GUARD, GUARD, the number's 2011. GUARD 2011. All right, with that, we're also just inviting you to, if you have any feedback for us, if you saw the GUARD, you want to write us your thoughts, liked it, didn't like it, agree, disagree on anything we said, you can either send us an email at info@themesh.tv, or even better, go on and call the Mesh line. That is a phone number we have set up, 828-619-0048. You can call and leave a voice message. Just say you're calling for Footcandle Films. Leave your message. If it works out pretty good, we'd love to play it on a future show or even just reference it in a future show. So we always encourage any feedback we can get on the show. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you thought of the films we're talking about. In about 2 weeks, there's going to be an episode posting where we're going to be talking about our picks for best films of 2011. We're going to be sharing both our best films that we showed within the Footcandle film series,
Right.
and then also the best ones outside of the Footcandle film series that we just happen to see in a normal theater screening. We appreciate you sticking around and giving us a listen, and we look forward to talking to you here in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Footcandle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.
Staring at that McDonald's bag is making me hungry.
Yeah, I don't think I should have eaten that.